Alright, so we can get into the RegisterActivity.java now. And I'll start by defining the edit text for email, name as well as the password. Alright, then we have to define the progress bar. Then I'll just get inside the onCreate method and we'll start by defining the title for this activity. So for that, just type get support action bar dot set title. Then you can define any text that you want. I'll just type sign up. Alright. Then let's define one method to find all the views that we need to find in this activity. I'm doing this just to make the activity more readable. So instead of finding all the views here inside the onCreate method, I'm defining one separate method where we can find all the views. Anyways, it's totally up to you. So just hover over it and then click on create method, find views in register activity. And this method is not returning any value, that's why it has a type void. Alright, then I'm going to find the views one by one. Let's start with the register email. So find view by id within bracket r.id.editText register email. Then let's find for the password. Then for name. And then finally for the progress bar. Alright, after we are done with finding the views, we can define the show hide password method. So I'll just call the method after find views method. So just type show hide password and hover over it and click on create method. Alright, and since we have already defined this method in the main activity, I'll just open the main activity and copy the content of this method. Just make sure to see where this method is starting and ending and copy everything which is within inside the method. Alright, copy it, come back to the register activity and then just paste it. And now we have to change the name of the edit text variables. So this one has to be edit text register password. Alright, in the second one also, this is edit text register password. And here as well. Alright, so far we have found all the views and then we have declared the show hide password. Now we need to define the register button. So just define a button register. Then find the view r.id.button register. Then we have to set a on-click listener on the button so that when this register button is clicked, we can check the values which have been filled in by the user in the respective edit text, and if the values are verified, then we can start the registration process of the user. So just get inside the onClick method, declare string variable for email, and under this string variable we are going to extract and save the email that has been entered by the user in the edit text for register email. So to get the text, just type edit text register email, which is the edit text variable corresponding to the edit text for email in the layout of the register activity. Then .get text, then .toString to convert it into string. In the same way, I'll define the string variable for password as well as name. Alright, now we have to check if the user has entered all these three values before we can start with the registration process. So I'll just verify if these three variables are not empty. And then also we'll have to check if the email provided by the user is a valid email. And we will have to check if the password contains at least more than 6 digits. So I'll start with the name variable and I'll check if it is empty or not. So for that, just type if within bracket text utils dot is empty. Then within bracket text name, and this text utils is simply a set of utility functions to do operations on string objects. So using text utils, we are simply checking whether this variable is empty or not. If this variable is empty, then we are going to display one toast message reminding the user to enter the name before clicking on register button. After displaying the toast message, we can just show error in the edit text for name. So just type edit text register name dot set error, and then you can enter the text that you want to be displayed. And then finally we have to request focus on this edit text for the error to be visible. Then after this if statement closes, add else if. Now we are going to check if the text email variable is empty or not. And we will do the same with this variable also. If the email has not been entered by the user, we will display toast message and then we will display error in the edit text for email. Alright. Then add another else if. Now this time we are going to check if the email entered by the user is a valid email or not. We will use regular expression and we'll just use patterns method. So just type patterns dot email address. So it will get the pattern of the email address. Then dot matcher, this is going to match with the text that we are going to enter within the bracket, and in the bracket we have text email which contains the email address entered by the user, and then finally dot matches. So in simple word, this condition is going to check if the email address entered by the user matches the regular expression of email address or not, which means we are simply checking if the email address entered by the user is a valid email or not. We are not verifying it here. We are not sending any verification link to the user from this condition. We are just checking the validity of the pattern of the email address. And you can observe we have added this exclamation mark at the beginning, which is going to negate the entire condition. So this else if will be true in case the email address entered by the user is not a valid email. Only in that case this else if will run. And here also we are going to show one toast message and then display error. Then finally we can check the password also, and to check the password I'll just copy the if statement where we are checking for the name. Then I'll just make the necessary changes here. Then let me copy this one also. I'll paste it once again. Then after that we can check the length of the password, and it should not be less than 6. And then we will have to change the toast message here. Alright, and then finally we can start the progress bar, which means if the control is coming to this final else part, then none of the else if or the if statement are true, which means all the conditions are false. which means the user has entered name, email, password, and the password has a length of more than 6 digits, and the email is also a valid email. In that case, we can simply register the user. And to register the user, I'm going to define one register user method. So before calling the register user method, I'll just start the progress bar. Then after that, I'll just call the register user method, and in this method, I'll pass the email, name and password of the user. Alright, then hover over this method, click on create register user, and then select the second option that is under register activity and not within the onCreate method. Alright, then let's get inside the register user method, and now before starting with this method, we have to open Firebase and we have to connect our app with Firebase. So just click on tools in the menu bar, then scroll to Firebase, click on it, and the Firebase assistant is going to start. Here just click on authentication and then click on any of the options, since we are not setting up the authentication using any of these methods, but we just want to connect our app with Firebase and we want to add the required dependencies. So you can just click on any one of them or just click on authenticate using a custom authentication system. So the first step is to connect your app to Firebase. So just click on connect to Firebase, and the Firebase console is going to be opened in your default browser. Let it open up. Then you can click on add project in case you have not created a project. So just click on add project. Then you have to define one name for your project. Then after that, just enable Google Analytics for this project and continue. Then you have to configure Google Analytics. So choose or create a default analytics account. So let's say default account for Firebase, and then create project. So this is going to create project in Firebase and your new project is ready. Just click on continue. Now your Firebase Android app has been created in Firebase. So we can just connect it. So click on connect, and your Android Studio project is connected to your Firebase Android app, and you can now use Firebase in your project. So we can just go back to Android Studio. Now we have completed the first step, that is we have connected our app to Firebase. Now we have to add the Firebase Authentication SDK to our app before we can start using Firebase. So just click on this add the Firebase Authentication SDK and then click on accept changes. Alright, dependencies set up correctly. So we can minimize this Firebase assistant now. And now let's define one more global variable, private Firebase Auth. This is Firebase authentication variable, and let's just call it auth. Alright, then coming inside the registered user method, let's use the Firebase authentication variable. So auth equals Firebase auth dot get instance. So this auth variable will get the current instance of the Firebase authentication. Then auth dot create user with email and password, since we are going to create user using email and password. Then this method takes two parameters. First one is the email and second is the password, and they should be non-null. If either of them are null, then we will get Firebase exceptions. And that is why before calling the registered user method, we have checked whether the email and password are null or not. Alright, then dot add on complete listener, because we want some logic to happen or take place only after the user has been created successfully. Then within brackets register activity dot this comma new space on complete listener. Just hit enter. Autocomplete is going to add the onComplete method. Alright, then coming inside the onComplete method, we have to add one semicolon at the end of create user with email password method. That's why it's showing one error, so I'll just add one semicolon here. Then after that, I'll just get rid of this at org.jetbrains.annotation.notnull. Now we have to check if the user was created successfully or not. So let's begin with the if statement, and within the bracket we will check if the task was successful or not, and we don't have to define this task variable. This onComplete method already has a parameter as task, so this is the same task variable that we are using here. So if the task was successful, then we will get the current user or the currently logged in user, which is in fact the user we have just now created. So Firebase user space Firebase user, or you can give any other name that you want, equals auth.get current user. Alright, then if within brackets Firebase user is not null, then that means the user was successfully created and the Firebase user variable will not be null. In that case, we can update the Firebase user object. So we will start with the display name or the name of the user. So write user profile change request profile updates equals new user profile change request dot builder dot set display name, and here we will pass the text variable which contains the name of the user, then dot build. Now this request is used to update user profile information, and we can update the display name or the name of the user, as well as we can update the photo of the user using this request. And since we are not taking any photograph from the user, so I'll not update that. And then finally Firebase user dot update profile, and then within bracket profile updates. Profile updates is the instance that we have created for user profile change request. Alright, then we can display one toast message that the registration was successful. And after that we will have to open the user profile activity. So I will just create one intent here, user profile activity equals new intent register activity dot this comma user profile activity dot class, and then we will have to stop the user from going back to the register activity on pressing back button. So I'm going to set some flags with this intent so that if the user presses back button in the user profile activity, we are not returned back to the register activity. So user profile activity dot set flags intent dot flag activity clear top intent dot flag activity new task and intent dot flag activity clear task. So either we can set flags in different lines using set flags method, or we can set all the flags at once, just the way I have done it. Then we can finally start the activity, user profile activity, and then we can finish the current activity. And also let me change the first letter of the intent. It should be lowercase. And this completes the if part where we were checking if the task was successful or not. So just check where your brackets are ending. We are going to add one else part, and here we have to handle the exceptions in case the task was not successful. So I'll just use try and catch blocks. So write try open brackets throw task dot get exception. This is going to get the exception that occurred in the task. Then coming outside of the bracket, catch exception E. Then within brackets, toast.makeText register activity dot this comma E dot get message. E is the instance of the exception that has occurred. So we are just displaying the exact exception that has occurred. Then comma toast dot length short dot show. And then coming out of this catch block, I'll just make the progress bar to be gone. Alright, and then finally we have to create this user profile activity before we can launch our app. So I'll just create a new activity. Let it be empty activity, and the name of the activity should be user profile activity, then finish. Alright, then coming back to the register activity, there's no error now. And before moving any further, let's run the app and see what we have now. Sometimes this also happens with our Android Studio, that one of the process gets blocked by the antivirus. So we have to allow it. We have to allow the app. Then run the app once again. And this time I'll try to register in the app. So I'll enter my details. Let's sign up. An internal error has occurred. Configuration not found. Now this error has occurred because even though we have connected the Firebase to our app, we have not configured Firebase from the Firebase console to accept email and password as a way of registration. So I'll just open console.firebase.google, then click on your application. Alright, we have to open authentication. Then click on get started. Alright, then under the sign in methods, we have sign in providers. Here we have to open this email password and we have to enable it, then save. Alright, now we can return back to our app and try to register once again. And you can see that the registration is successful now. Even the user profile activity has opened up. We have not created the activity, so that's why it's blank. And if we come back to our Firebase console and under the authentication, if we click on users, we have a new user here and you can see the details like the user creation date as well as the last signed in, and we have the user ID as well. Alright,